So I wasn't going to come on here tonight because I have to admit, I'll be honest, today has been a really, really, really tough day. Um, as you can see, my eyes are all swollen and baggy and stuff. This week has been super, super hard. Um, I did my very first, I guess, actual digging into my EMDR therapy last week, and it has seriously run me through the ringer. It was really, really hard. For those of you that don't know what EMDR therapy is, it's where they take your subconscious thoughts and bring them to your short-term memory. And what it does is it brings all the traumatic things that you've ever gone through and been through and put it in a different part of your brain so that you don't have triggers anymore. So when you go somewhere and something triggers you, that would normally trigger you, you're just kind of like, okay. So a lot of people are scared to do it because it brings up a lot of things that you haven't felt or thought about in a really long time. And I'd have to say my very first in-depth meeting was last Monday, and it tore into me pretty good. And I kept thinking, I don't want to share. I don't want to talk about this. I'm worried about what people think. And you know what? I realized today through a lot of tears and crying and stuff, I realized that we spend too much of our time worrying about what other people think of us. We worry about, having to be a certain way. Now, I realized another thing today through all this hard time of all this crying and stuff. It makes me angry because I'm like, I don't want to be emotional. I don't want to be upset. I don't want to sit here and feel this way because people around me, some of my friends could probably get kind of sick of me being mopey and depressed. And so I would put that mask on my face and pretend to be something that I really wasn't, just so that people would be okay with being around me. I'd put my makeup on, I'd go out the door, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be happy today. And even though I had been crying for a while before that, because I struggle with depression and anxiety, I didn't want my friends to know that I was struggling with something, because some of them don't, if they're not feeling that, they're not going to understand what you're thinking and feeling and what you're going through on something like that. And maybe some of you think I talk a little bit too much about this, but unfortunately, there are so many of you that are suffering through this that have not been brave enough to come on here and talk about it, or you're not, maybe not brave enough is the wrong word. I don't want to make enemies on that, but just it's not something that you feel like you need to talk about with people, and I totally understand that. I was a person that would not talk about these things for fear of many different things. So I would never publicly talk about depression, anxiety, or struggles or anything like that, because I didn't want people to know that that was part of me or that was really who I was. So as today was really tough, and I experienced a lot of triggers today, I just kind of stayed in bed all day long. And then a couple things hit me tonight that just made me lose my junk. I mean, like, I put me into tears, and then probably, it had to do with some things that we're talking about with friends. And I guess I'm just kind of tired. I guess I'm kind of worn out of pretending to be something that I haven't been all these years. And I realized that through the trauma that I went through as a little kid, I'd have to pretend I was asleep so that the person that was doing yucky stuff to me would, I guess, not hurt me if he knew I was awake. And then I'd have to pretend I was waking up so that that person would stop doing things to me when I was a little girl. And so I'd have to pretend that. And then growing up, I remember sitting there in church as a little kid thinking, oh man, I just swore. I have to pretend that I'm this perfect little girl so that I don't go to hell. And I had to pretend around friends to be this hyper happy type of thing. And then I would lose friends and I wouldn't understand why. And then as an adult, I would have to pretend to be this, like if I didn't have a perfect clean house, then, my husband's family would, say certain things, or he would react or respond a certain way. And so I realized today that all these years I've had to pretend to be something that I'm not. And if you can realize that, holy cow, it's kind of a smack to the face, because you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, like, what is the whole purpose of this? Why would you want to sit there and pretend things? Because if the people that are around you don't like who you really are, they might not be worth having around. And if you don't like who you are right now, then what do you need to do and change to be who you want to be? So I started talking to my husband about it as I was sitting there crying for the last few hours. And I was like, I really don't know who I am. And he's like, actually, you do, babe. You got to sit here and think about it. And I'm like, I get on lives. I sit here and preach about knowing who you are and getting yourself together so that you know what you need to do in life. And yet I'm sitting here boo-hooing today because of something that triggered and happened to me today that just completely made me fall apart. And I'm thinking, I've had to sit here and pretend. Who am I really? I've had to be this, and I've had to be that, and I've had to be this, just so that the people around me can be protected, or the people around me don't have to feel uncomfortable, always worrying about what other people think and feel, when yet I should be taking care of myself at times. And then when you start thinking about that, you're like, oh, I'm being selfish, and I've got to sit here and help and be there for other people. And it's like, you know what, guys, how many of us, when we're struggling or having a hard time, how many of us think about what we need to do to take care of ourselves and to love ourselves, and to, if we take care of ourselves and we give ourselves enough time each day at improving the things that we want to improve, accomplishing the goals that we want to accomplish, taking some time for self-development to build yourself up, surround yourself with good people. For the longest time, I was so desperate for friends as a kid that I was willing to do anything that they told me to do just so that I could have friends. When I was dating and of dating age, I would do anything that the man or the boy would tell me to do just so that he would love me, just so that he would care about me. And those insecurities that continue to grow and develop inside of me. And then as an adult, here I am as a parent and as a mom, and I have to sit here and pretend to be or not be a certain way just so that my kids will turn out. Well, that's not what's going to raise or help your kids to turn out. It's by being an example. So if you don't like yourself, then there's some things that you probably need to change. Or maybe you're one of those that are just too hard on yourself. Maybe you're doing a dang good job, but no matter how hard you try, you still see yourself as falling short. Still see yourself as not doing a good enough job and being the best person that you need to be, when yet everybody else around you sees something great and amazing. And I'd have to say I'm probably one of those people. Everybody else around me could sit here and sit there and tell me, Lisa, you've done good at this. You've raised your kids. They're doing good in school, and they're still alive. And you're married, and you've been married for 14 years, and that takes, and those are successors, and those might not be your successors, but it doesn't mean that you don't have some. Maybe sometime you need to sit by yourself, take out a journal, and write down the things that you see or other people have seen about you, because we are the hardest critics. It's not everybody else around us. It's us ourselves that we're the hardest on. And my husband reminded me today, he's like, you know what? The funniest thing, the time that you are you, where you're not pretending, is when you get super hyper and you're silly and you're hilarious. I could be the only one in a movie theater that's laughing the loudest. And he says it, and it doesn't embarrass you. Like, you think it's hilarious, and everybody will start laughing just because you're laughing. And the movie doesn't even have to be funny. And it's like, yeah, that is me. That's when I'm at my best, is when I'm hyper and happy and silly and not having to try to be something just because a friend thinks this friend is just so sick of her being depressed. And sometimes I've sabotaged relationships because of fear of, I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to get hurt, and so I push them away. And unfortunately, I've lost friendships doing that. I've lost relationships doing that. There's been times where I've been so afraid to be me that I won't even allow myself to go out of my house and get to know people at the socials with church, or different parties people have invited me to, because it frightens me that somebody might not like who I am inside and who I am. And it's sad. It's super sad, because think about all of the things that you miss out on just because of that fear of being you. Or maybe you don't know who you are. You don't know how to find yourself. You don't know which direction to go in and what you're supposed to do. And for the longest time, that was me. And I would have to say, through the counseling that I've gone through, and maybe this isn't for you, but I don't see any counseling being harmful. You may have found the wrong person that might have just not clicked with you, but it doesn't mean that every single one of them out there is not good for you. And maybe, it's great to have advice from friends and stuff, but sometimes, or spouses, but sometimes you need that extra little bit of professional help, or maybe you need to get on medication for what you're feeling. Maybe you need to get rid of some of family and friends that you have in your life that might be pulling you down, that you don't realize it until you have some traumatic things happen, or some triggers happen, or you lose everything in your life. Sometimes you have to hit that rock bottom in order to be able to see what's been right in front of you this whole entire time. Maybe you're one of those ones that are absolutely terrified of climbing that hill that has been set before you your whole entire life, for fear of what's going to be on the other side, for fear of maybe there is happiness without this person, or maybe there is happiness with this person. You just have to let down some of those walls and those barriers that you've built up so strong and so heavy to keep you protected. I guess I talk about things that I go through myself, because I don't like coming on here and talking about something that I act like I know a whole bunch about unless I've gone through it myself, because I like to be more empathetic rather than just trying to teach and preach and then not having anything to back myself up on. Sometimes when you may not have a lot of friends, which I've always struggled with as a kid and as an adult, because of those walls I've built, that protection to keep everybody away from getting to know Lisa. It's made it super, super lonely. And so it hasn't been really, really easy. And some of those people have come and gone, kind of like seasons, because they don't know how to exactly deal with that emotional part of me. And I've got to not be ashamed of that part of me, because I'm learning through this counseling that it's okay to feel. And sometimes, guys, I'd have to say, feeling things which I've only known how to feel negative, I'm hoping that on the other side of that hill that I've stayed so far away from, that eventually I'll be able to be one of those ones that can see who I've affected, who I have helped, how I've helped myself, how I've become stronger, how I've been able to climb something that I never thought I could climb and do, that I was successful and a thriver, and that it's okay to be emotional, because it lets you know that you're humble enough to be open to advice and words of encouragement and hope, that when people give you advice on something, that you're not turning your other head just because you don't think that you need it, or that it can't help, it won't be anything of use to you. I have my EMDR tomorrow, and I'm terrified because I felt like I was left as a mess last week. And the doctor's great. He's good and everything. You're not saying that. It's just, whew, I had no idea that this was going to completely rip me apart. But I have hope and belief, just like a little kid at Christmas with Santa Claus, that, you know, that there's going to be those rewards, that there's going to be those gifts at the end, and that things will be great and good. Yeah, I've come far in a year. Yeah, I'm doing really great and not feeling depressed and anxious all the time. Because whereas before, it was so much harder, and I couldn't talk to people, and I couldn't do lives like this and be vulnerable and let people see me without makeup and see the real me. The one thing that I know for a fact I've improved on is I'm not ashamed of this. I'm not ashamed or worried about coming on here and being like, that girl, she's so ugly, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Whereas before, I would have died having anybody see me like this. That is one thing that I have come to, that I am not ashamed of how I look to people. And that I know that the shoes that I've walked in have been super, super hard. And I'm sure that there's other people's shoes where they have gone through something excruciating too. And I wouldn't want to trade places with that person. But by going through these things, the thing I am grateful for of being me is these things have taught me such great big lessons that I have been able, sorry guys, like I'm allergic to something I put on or something. It's making me itch. I have been able to listen, be a listener, and be there for people that have been struggling, to be able to hopefully give people an outlet where they can feel kind of safe when they're listening to me talk and realize that, I'm not the only one going through this. I mean, I remember hanging out with some of my friends that have never struggled or gone through traumatic things and being so embarrassed because they're always happy, they're always energetic, and it made me feel awful. And I hated sometimes being around those happy, hyper, silly people because I didn't know how to be that way myself, and it made me feel more and more crazy and not normal because they were like that. And so again, I would go back to pretending to be something that I wasn't yet. And I'm excited to be able to be to the point where I can look at other people and be like, you know what? I know exactly how you're feeling. And I'm getting there, and I'm almost there. But yeah, it's going to take a lot more months, and you just have to be patient with yourself when you're struggling through things like this, and realize that if you're not quite there yet, it doesn't mean that you're never not going to be. And not to give up on yourself. And yes, I'm a hypocrite on that so many times, but I'm with you. I am trying to do that myself. I am trying to be one of those ones that can seriously say that we can do this. I kind of lost my train of thought because I'm like, what the heck? I'm already on here, but I guess it must be my husband watching me. And he's totally going to make me start bawling. But it's great. It's great to have support. And you shouldn't try being something that you're not. And to be happy with who you are. Stop wearing all the makeup to cover up who you are. Stop putting on a face even when you're hurting and struggling inside. Stop trying to please others. I mean, I would spend hours cleaning my house just so that certain people in our family would not judge me or think less of or different of us because we knew that they would talk about it in the family. And it just killed me. It gave me anxiety so bad. And I'm so grateful to be able to be past that. Holy cow, what a huge burden it is lifted off your back when you don't have to sit there and worry about that, because when you find the right people to be in your life, they're going to love you in your hard times. They're going to love you in your good times. They're going to love you in your bad times and all the way through. And they're going to be patient no matter how long it takes you to get through something. And if you have not yet found people like that, don't worry. There are some out there that are. I mean, heck, I'll be one of them for you. You just message me and I'll be right there in a jiff there for you on the phone, at your house, or whatever it is, because I've gone through it too. So when you think about how badly you hate the way you look, maybe you're not the weight that you want to be, or you have some acne, or you don't like the clothes, you don't have the money to buy the right clothes that you want, or you're hating your job, or things are really hard at home, don't forget that we were made for a certain reason to be here at this time. And we may not know what it is now, but soon enough, if we're patient long enough, we'll figure out and find out what that is. If you're going through a hard, awful divorce, and you may or may not have kids to brighten your day, look back at what you've created. Look back at who you will become when you're on the other side of that struggle that you're going through. When you're struggling with a job loss and you're terrified of where the money is going to come from and how you're going to get it and how you're going to put food on the table for your family, maybe you're the sole provider or whatever, don't forget the fact that you tried and you're doing your very best. And think about what you need or what you can learn from these hardships that you're going through. Because yes, I can spend my whole day in bed and cry about it, and that's okay because I'm feeling. And I know that eventually tomorrow will be a different day, and I may or may not feel the same way the next day. But as long as I try my very hardest, you make sure you get yourself out of bed. And if it's brushing your teeth and combing your hair, that's great, because some people just can't. Some people have given up so much and have ended up taking their life because it's gotten so hard. And I've known a lot of those. But when you're feeling those heart of hearts, sit down and take some time to think about your goods, your happy times, the moments that you've been your happiest, and think about what made those times and moments in my life the greatest. And then think about what you can do to, may not necessarily get those people or those things back, but what type of things you did to make you feel that happy and that good about yourself at those times. And hopefully they're realistic or logical things. And and if they're not, then take some time to ponder. Go take some time for yourself and listen to your favorite music. The biggest thing that gets me out of my hardest times and my struggles is my building. And that may not be your thing, but creating something from nothing for me into something beautiful is huge for me, because it kind of reminds me of me and thinking of myself, of starting from something so tattered, so worn, so broken, into fixing it and figuring out how to keep it together and to make it beautiful and shiny and new again. And so when I'm building, I turn my music up as loud as I can because it helps me not to think of all the crazy things that have gone on that have upset me and struggled me that day. I put a candle on. It's nice this time of year because I can turn the tree on and the lights and just the peaceful feeling it gives you. And then I put myself to building. And yeah, it gets frustrating because I can't figure out a cut or a certain angle or whatever. But I can sit there and listen. I can put my playlist on YouTube, turn my loudspeaker on that I have, and just go away at it and look at the creation that I'm making myself. And then I can stand back and look at it and be like, that's amazing. Look at what I turned that into. Look at how nice and awesome it looks. Maybe yours is art. Maybe it's designing something. Maybe it's working out in the yard. Maybe it's, you know, taking a drive. Whatever it is, do more of it. Because these things eventually, if you do it after a certain amount of times, it rewires your brain and your body to respond and react differently to negative things into positive things. Don't ever, ever, ever sell yourself short of being something else just to please other people. Because in the end, you're still you, and you want to be okay and happy with what you've become at the end of the day and what you are. I totally believe in you. We can all do this together. It takes a lot of friendship and love and understanding and patience. And if you know somebody that's going through things like this, I highly, highly, highly plead with you that you'll be patient with that person, because it's not an easy thing to go through and live with people who have depression and anxiety. And I really, at the end of the day, they will thank you for it. I'm so grateful. My husband and my parents and my friends have been there, and it's been a struggle for them because it's not the speed that they may want things to go for me. But as long as I'm doing my very, very best and waking up every day and trying on my shoes and saying, okay, I'm wearing the same old boots, but what type of things can I dig into today to make better? And hopefully you guys can feel that way too. We're in this together, and we can pull through. Thanks guys for watching, and hope that you enjoy the rest of your night.